You come home, you've had the worst day of your life. Everything went wrong. The kind of day where you just want to sit in silence and not talk to anyone. And the moment you open the door, your dog loses its mind. Not in a polite way, not in a, oh, hello there way. In a full body, tail spinning, I thought you were gone forever, this is the greatest moment of my existence kind of way. And something happens in your chest when that occurs. Something that feels suspiciously like being loved. But then the rational part of your brain shows up uninvited and says, it's just conditioning, it's just instinct, it doesn't actually love you, it's an animal. And here's the question that should bother you more than it probably does. What if that rational part of your brain is wrong? Because here's what nobody tells you about animal love. The conversation isn't really, do animals love us? That question is almost too simple. The real question is this: when we decided that love requires consciousness, language, and a human brain to be valid, did we just make that up? Because the science that has come out in the last 20 years on animal emotion is not what you learned in school. It is not what most people believe, and it fundamentally challenges the assumption that what your pet feels toward you is somehow less real than what you feel toward it. This is the story of what animals actually feel, how we know it, and why the answer matters more than you think. For most of scientific history, the official position was simple. Animals don't feel. Not really. Not in any meaningful way. This idea traces back to René Descartes in the 1600s. Descartes argued that animals were essentially biological machines, automata, flesh robots running on instinct with zero inner experience. When a dog yelped in pain, Descartes said that wasn't suffering. That was just a mechanical response, like a clock making noise when you drop it. This wasn't a fringe view. This became the foundation of how Western science studied animals for centuries. You weren't allowed to talk about animal emotions in academic papers. You weren't allowed to use words like grief or joy or love to describe animal behavior. That was called anthropomorphism, projecting human qualities onto non-human creatures, and it was considered deeply unscientific. The irony is brutal. We spent 300 years designing our entire understanding of animal minds around the philosophy of a man who also believed the pineal gland was where the soul lived. But here's the thing about inconvenient evidence. It keeps showing up whether you want it to or not. In 2012, a group of the world's leading neuroscientists signed something called the Cambridge Declaration on Consciousness. Read that again. The world's leading neuroscientists signed a declaration. What it said was this: non-human animals possess the neurological substrates that generate consciousness, meaning the brain structures responsible for conscious experience and emotion in humans exist in all mammals, all birds, and many other creatures, including octopuses. This wasn't a fringe paper. This was the scientific establishment formally saying, we got this wrong. These animals are not biological machines. They have inner lives. And once you accept that, the next question becomes uncomfortable very fast. If they have inner lives, what's in there? Because here's where it gets genuinely fascinating. When researchers started scanning animal brains during social interactions, during play, during reunion with their owners, they found something that should stop you in your tracks. The same neurochemicals that produce love in humans are present and active in animals. Oxytocin, the bonding hormone, the one that floods your brain when you hug someone you love, when a mother holds her newborn, when you feel genuinely close to another person. It floods in dogs too, when they look at you. A 2015 study by Japanese researcher Takefumi Kikusui measured oxytocin levels in both dogs and their owners during interaction. When dogs and owners made eye contact, oxytocin levels spiked in both of them. Not just the human, the dog too. The same chemical, the same direction, simultaneously. They weren't performing affection, they were chemically experiencing it. But oxytocin could still be explained away as a bonding mechanism. Evolutionary programming doesn't necessarily mean love in the way we understand it. So let's talk about grief, because grief is harder to explain away. Grief requires something profound. It requires that you understood the relationship you lost had value, that the absence of that being created something where something used to be. Grief is not instinct. Grief is attachment, and animals grieve. Elephants are the most documented example. When an elephant dies, the herd doesn't just move on. They return to the body. They touch it with their trunks. They stand in silence. They have been documented returning to the bones of dead family members years later, touching the same bones, standing quietly in what researchers have no better word for than mourning. An elephant named Tara, who lived at a sanctuary in Tennessee, had a best friend, a dog named Bella. They were were inseparable for years. When Bella died, Tara stood at the place where Bella's body had been for days. She didn't eat. She didn't engage. She grieved. An elephant grieving a dog. Not a member of her species. Not an animal she was biologically programmed to bond with. A dog. A friendship that crossed every boundary evolution would have predicted. And when it ended, she mourned it. Tell me that isn't love. Go ahead. I'll wait. Chimpanzees have been documented carrying the bodies of their dead infants for days or weeks, refusing to put them down, grooming them, seemingly unable to process the loss. Orca mothers have been observed carrying dead calves at the surface for over 2 weeks, described by researchers as a tour of grief. Dolphins have been observed supporting the bodies of dead companions at the surface for hours. These behaviors cost something. They use energy. They create vulnerability. They serve no evolutionary function. They exist because the relationship meant something, because the absence of that being created something that looks from every measurable angle exactly like loss. Here's another angle that doesn't get enough attention. If an animal loves you, it should recognize you specifically, not just humans in general, not just the person who feeds you, you as an individual, as irreplaceable. And the evidence that animals do this is overwhelming. Dogs can recognize their owner's scent over any other human scent. In brain imaging studies, the scent of their owner activates the caudate nucleus, the reward center, more than any other stimulus, more than food, more than toys, more than unfamiliar humans. You, specifically, light up the reward center of your dog's brain more than anything else in its world. Crows, as we touched on before, recognize individual human faces. They remember specific people for years. They distinguish between strangers and known individuals in ways that require genuine memory and individual recognition. A crow doesn't just see human, it sees that human. There are documented cases of cats, often unfairly maligned as aloof and indifferent, traveling hundreds of miles to find their owners after being separated. A cat named Holly in 2012 traveled over 290 miles across Florida over 2 months to return to her family. No GPS, no map, just an internal drive toward a specific place where specific people were. Tell me what you call that, if not attachment. And horses. Horses remember humans they haven't seen in years. Studies have shown horses can recognize photographs of people they previously had positive relationships with and respond differently to those images than to strangers. They remember your face. They hold on to it. They hold on to it somewhere. Now, here's where we have to sit with something uncomfortable. If animals feel bonding hormones toward us, if they grieve us, if they recognize us as individuals, if they travel impossible distances to return to us, what exactly is missing? The usual answer is language. Animals can't tell us they love us. They can't articulate their inner state. But think about that standard for a second. A 6-month-old human cannot tell you it loves you. It has no language. It cannot articulate its inner state. But nobody argues that babies don't love their parents. We read it in their behavior. We see it in how they respond. We know it because of what they do when their parent enters the room and what they do when their parent leaves. We apply a completely different standard to animals, and the only justification for that different standard is the assumption we started with, that animal experience is categorically less real than human experience. But that assumption is exactly what the neuroscience is dismantling. Here's the deeper issue. We tend to define love in very human-specific ways. Love means saying I love you. Love means writing poetry. Love means complex cognitive processing of romantic attachment. And then we look at animals, find they can't do those specific things, and conclude they can't love. But that's like saying a person born without vocal cords cannot love because they can't say the words. The words are not the love. The words are just one way of pointing at it. What if love at its core is not about language or cognition at a human level? What if love is about consistent preference for a specific being, about seeking their presence, about distress at their absence, about behaving in ways that prioritize their well-being, even